HOA sold my land while I was deployed, so I took their entire neighborhood. I just lived my own worst nightmare. My homeowners association, HOA, auctioned off my house while I was deployed. Their reason? A cold letter stating my unattended presence was dragging down property values. They didn't like the color of my workshop and claimed my dock was a community hazard. The funny thing is, the only thing repossessed that day was their entire scheme. Right when the Coast Guard, the U.S. Marshals, and the IRS got involved, they had no idea who I was. They had no idea they were living on my legacy. This Florida coastal life teaches you that the most dangerous predators don't have teeth. They have bylaws and lawyers on retainer. I'm Jack Callahan. In the Marines, I was a force recon operator. My job was to go where I didn't belong, watch without being seen, and shape my environment. Ironically, I had to do the same thing at home. Cynthia Davenport, our HOA president at Osprey Landing, ran the neighborhood like her own private boot camp. She had platinum blonde hair pulled into a bun so tight it gave me a headache just looking at it. And she wore white linen suits like she was perpetually on her way to a magazine cover shoot. She hated me on sight. I didn't fit. My house was an original 1950s concrete block structure, CBS, built to laugh at hurricanes. It sat on a double lot, an affront to the cookie-cutter beige McMansions that had sprouted up around it. But my real prize was a 2,000-square-foot workshop out back where I repaired and restored boat engines. It was my business, my therapy. To Cynthia, it was a stain. I was sitting in that shop, the smell of grease, fiberglass, and the salt air of the Gulf of Mexico hanging thick. I was on a tense video call. On the other side of the screen was Mr. Ader, a senior investigator with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, DEP. His face was grim, lit by the fluorescent office glow. "Mr. Callahan," he said, his voice crackling to the laptop speakers, "you're alleging that the Osprey Landing HOA conducted unauthorized dredging of the main channel. Do you have proof?" Mia, my wife, a PhD in marine biology with NOAA, sat beside me. She was my brains and my command center. She manipulated a 3D model on her screen. "We do," Mia cut in, her voice sharp and precise. "Sonar data from 6 months ago versus this week shows significant bottom erosion, exactly where they built their new community pier. They are destabilizing the entire embankment." Before Ader could respond, a shadow fell across the open bay door. The click-clack of heels on concrete sounded like gunfire. Cynthia Davenport stood there, arms crossed. She wasn't alone. 2 giants in beige polo shirts with Osprey Landing compliance embroidered on them stood just behind her. They looked less like men who measured grass height and more like leg breakers. Well, Cynthia said, her voice dripping with sugary contempt. "Look what crawled out of the workshop." Her eyes flicked from me to Mia, then to the laptop screen where Mr. Ader was watching with growing curiosity. Cynthia didn't realize or didn't care that she was speaking in front of a state official. "I see you received a notice," she said, waving a sheaf of papers. "The auction is Friday. This house and this lot are being repossessed to cover your outstanding fines and legal fees. We have a very eager buyer, one who will actually contribute to the community aesthetic." I kept my voice calm, trained. "You can't," I said. "I'm covered under the Service Member Civil Relief Act. This is illegal." Cynthia laughed, a dry, unpleasant sound. "That annoying little law. Our attorneys say it doesn't apply, as your violations predated your most recent vacation. Your workshop is non-compliant. Your rusted-out boat on that trailer is an abomination." Her 2 goons stepped into my shop, my private space. One started poking at a Mercury V8 outboard I was rebuilding. "Don't touch that," I growled, rising. "Oh, what are you going to do, Marine?" Cynthia sneered, savoring the word. "Hit us? I think not. You see, you may be a big fish in your little military pond, Cal, but here, in Osprey Landing, I am the law." She'd made a critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. She'd overlooked my wife. And most importantly, she knew nothing about the history of this land. She thought she was fighting over a mispainted workshop. She had no idea she was fighting the man who owned the submerged land under the very channel she parked her 80-foot yacht in. She had just declared war, and she'd done it in front of state witness. This wasn't my trap. It was laid by my great-grandfather, Arthur Callahan, back in 1953. He was a tough-as-nails dredger who looked at this stretch of Florida mangrove swamp and saw nothing but potential. He spent a decade digging canals with barges and dynamite, carving out the deep water channels that turned worthless swampland into a boater's paradise. When the developers came sniffing in the 80s, they bought up thousands of his acres. But Arthur, the wily old bastard, kept one thing. He kept the original concrete house and the double lot. And, in a move of pure legal genius, he kept the sovereign submerged land rights to every canal he had dug. What does that mean? It means that while the developer sold waterfront lots, the land under the water, the seabed, the mud, the sand where every dock, every piling is sunk, it still belongs to the Callahan family. For decades, it was a legal quirk, a fun fact. The developers built around it. The HOA was formed, and nobody ever read the fine print. Until Cynthia Davenport decided to pick a fight with me. Her war started quietly while I was in the Philippines, running advisory work for our partners. The first emails were petty. Violation notice. Trash can visible from street. Fine. Unapproved shutter color. Mia fought them. She went to the HOA meetings, laptop and data files in hand. Tried to reason with people who only care about blind compliance. Then the attacks got bigger. Gross violation. Operation of an unauthorized commercial enterprise. They met my shop, where I fix boats for friends and a few select clients. Fine, $5,000. Then the kill shot. Community hazard, unstable dock structure. They hired an engineer, Cynthia's buddy, to declare my great-grandfather's solid concrete dock unsafe and ordered demolished at my expense for $20,000. The fine stacked up, $50,000, $75,000. Mia sent them my SCRA paperwork. They ignored it. Their lawyer found a loophole, or so they thought, that the violations were pre-existing and that my deployment didn't materially affect my ability to pay. They knew we had savings. This wasn't about money. This was a land grab. They put a lien on the house. Then they set the auction date. Now, back in the workshop, Cynthia was enjoying her moment. Mr. Ader from the DEP was still on the screen, his face flushed with anger at hearing Cynthia confess her scheme. "Ms. Davenport," Ader said, his voice booming, "you are interfering with a state investigation, and I believe I just heard you admit to a willful violation of the Service Member Civil Relief Act." Cynthia finally glanced at the screen. For a fraction of a second, her mask cracked, fear flashed in her eyes. Then, she recovered. "I don't know who you are," she snapped, "and I don't know what this little chat is, but this meeting is over." She looked at one of her goons. "Cut it." The giant moved toward the laptop. Mia, lightning fast, snapped it shut. "Don't touch my property," she said, her voice ice cold. Cynthia's patience was gone. She looked at me. "Friday, noon auction. I trust you'll be able to clear your junk out by then." She turned on her heel and stalked out, her two henchmen following. As she reached the door, she paused. "Oh, and Cal," she said, not bothering to look back. "We'll be cutting the power and water tomorrow. To prepare for the property transfer. Have a good day." Outside, a heavy gust of wind blew through, carrying the smell of the coming storm. The air was thick and heavy. Mia opened the laptop. Mr. Ader was still there, and he looked livid. "Mr. Callahan," he said, "I think your problem just got a lot bigger than dredging. And I think Ms. Davenport just made a massive mistake. You don't know the half of it," I said, walking over to my great-grandfather's old desk. I opened a deep drawer and pulled out an old cardboard tube. Inside was a brittle hand-drawn map. "Mr. Ader, Ms. Davenport thinks she's trying to steal my house. What she doesn't know is that she just tried to bully the landlord of this entire neighborhood." Cynthia didn't wait until tomorrow. 10 minutes after she left, the power cut out. The hum of the fans, the whir of the AIC, the light on the computer, all dead. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the hot workshop. I went to the door. Down the street, one of Cynthia's goons was using bolt cutters to open a utility box. They had physically cut my main line. "Okay," Mia said from behind me, completely unfazed. "Phase 1. She walked to a panel on the wall I'd installed last summer. With a satisfying clunk, she threw a massive transfer switch. A second later, a low hum started, and the fluorescent lights overhead flickered and snapped back on. The fan spun to life. Outside, mounted on the shop wall, The 4 Tesla Powerwalls we had charged from our rooftop solar array had taken over. We were completely off the grid. Cynthia, standing by her white Range Rover down the street, looked confused as my lights came back on. Her annoyance was visible. Then she signaled. 2 of the beige Osprey Landing security trucks flipped on their flashing lights and pulled up, blocking both ends of my cul-de-sac. "They're blockading us," I said. "It's a private road." "She thinks she can." "She can try," Mia replied, opening her laptop, but she forgot about the Wi-Fi. Cynthia may have cut my cable, but she didn't know about the 5G cellular router we had hidden in the attic. Its directional antenna aimed at cell tower 5 miles away. Mr. Ader's face from the DEP popped back up. He looked even angrier. "They cut your power?" "And the road," I said, angling the laptop camera out the window so he could see. "I think this crosses a line from an HOA dispute." "You're damn right," Ader said. "This behavior, combined with the SCRA violations, and what I just witnessed, I'm calling the county sheriff. I'm also escalating this to the Attorney General's office. Ms. Davenport just crossed from civil nuisance to criminal harassment." "Thank you," Mia said. "We'll send you everything." Right N. The call died. Mia's laptop showed no connection. My phone dead. No bars. What the hell? I muttered. Mia ran to the window. Parked 2 houses down, on the lawn of a home under construction, was an unmarked white van. On its roof was a strange array of antennas. "A cell jammer," she said, her usual calm cracking with a spark of real anger. "An illegal military-grade jammer. She just committed a felony." Cynthia stepped out her car, her own phone pressed to her ear. She was talking to someone. Then she looked toward my shop and smiled. It was the smile of a shark that smelled blood. She believed she had cut us off completely. She had isolated us. "She's smart," I admitted. "Cut the power, cut the road, now the comms. She's controlling the battlefield." "She thinks she is," Mia said, her eyes lighting up. "She forgot about Cap." Cap. Reynolds was our next-door neighbor. An 80-year-old retired Coast Guardsman who'd lived here since before Osprey Landing. Was even an idea. His house, like mine, was an original concrete bunker. Cynthia hated him as much as she hated me. Mia ran to a metal cabinet, opening it and pulling out 2 rugged, handheld radios. "Remember when we helped Cap set up his mesh link?" she asked with a grin. "Last year, we'd set up a private, non-internet connected mesh network between my house, Cap's, and another friend's on the other side of the neighborhood. It was for emergencies like hurricanes. It ran on a frequency Cynthia's jammer wouldn't touch." I keyed the mic. "Cap, you read me? This is Cal." Static, then a gravelly voice. Loud and clear. "Cal, looks like the witch finally did it. Got your whole street blocked off. Looks like Berlin 61 out here." "Close, Cap," I said. "Listen, she's jamming the cell network. We need you. We need a line out." "She can jam cell," Cap cackled. "But she can't jam amateur radio. My rig can hit the damn International Space Station. Who you need to call, son?" "The Attorney General," I said, "and the Sheriff, and maybe the Pentagon." But before Cap could answer, Mia yelled from her screen. She linked her laptop to our internal meshnet and was accessing something else Cynthia had forgotten. "Turn," she said. "She forgot my bird." Turn was Mia's nickname for her DJI Matrice 300 research drone. A $20,000 piece of equipment with a thermal camera, 30x optical zoom, and the ability to fly in a gale. It was no toy. It was a professional-grade tool. "I'm putting it up," she said, fingers flying. "Cynthia wants a siege. Let's give her a real one. We're about to get total situational awareness." Outside, over the rising wind, I heard the distinctive whine of 4 rotors as Turn lifted off from our backyard. On Mia's screen, a crystal-clear 4K image appeared. A god's-eye view of the entire neighborhood. We saw Cynthia's Range Rover, the blockade trucks, the jammer van. And then Mia zoomed in. "Cal," she said, her voice tight. "Look." The 2 goons who had been with Cynthia. They weren't by her car anymore. They were slinking along my fence line, toward the shop. But they weren't coming to the front door. They were heading for the back wall, where I store my fuel and solvents. And one of them was carrying a bag. "They're not here for compliance," I said, a cold feeling running down my spine. "They're here to plant something." Mia, keep the camera there. Max zoom. I want to see the sweat on their foreheads. I said, my voice low. This was my territory. Threat identification, intent assessment. The intent here was crystal clear. On the screen, turn performed flawlessly, hovering almost silently at 200 feet, its camera locked on the two goons. We'd nicknamed them Gray Polo and Beer Gut. Beer Gut was carrying a black duffel bag. They thought they were being stealthy, moving in the shadows of the palm trees. But to Mia's thermal camera, they were lit up like two moving Christmas bulbs. They reached the back wall of the shop, where I have a fenced-off outdoor storage area. It's where I keep empty drums, a large compressor, and my EPA-approved marine-grade chemicals, anti-fouling paint, acetone, epoxy resins. It was a clean, legal operation, and I had a permit for every ounce of fluid in it. What are they doing? Mia whispered, as if they could hear her. Gray Polo pulled out a large pair of bolt cutters and snapped the padlock on the cage gate. A clear act of destruction and breaking and entering. Beer Gut opened the duffel bag, switched to thermal. I ordered. Mia flipped the feed. The image switched to a ghostly black and white. Beer Gut was pulling out multiple objects. They were plastic jugs. They're not cold, Mia observed. Not a room temperature flammable. Wait, I said, squinting. Look at how he's handling them. Carefully. He's wearing thick gloves. Beer Gut placed the plastic jugs next to my row of legal chemicals. Then he pulled out something else, a small, sealed package. Zoom in, I said. The camera pushed in, even with the high resolution. It was hard to make out, but then Gray Polo held it up, and the label caught the faint ambient light. It was a symbol, one I recognized from my time overseas. Oh my God, Cal, Mia gasped. Is that a hazmat label? Specifically toxic waste, medical or heavy industrial chemicals. The plan hit me all at once. It wasn't just a setup. It was more insidious. They're framing me, I said, thinking fast. They plan illegal containers, probably stolen waste from somewhere. Then Cynthia calls who? Not the county sheriff. She calls the EPA or the DEP, the same man we just talked to, Mr. Ader. She says the Hero Marine is running an illegal toxic waste dump next to a protected wetland. She'll ruin me. She'll destroy my business license, my reputation, and get my house in one clean shot. It was a brilliant, vicious plan. It transformed me from a wrong veteran into an environmental villain. It would turn every ally we'd just made against us. Not on my watch, Mia said, her jaw setting. Cap, I barked into the radio. Are you logging this? Seeing it live through Mia's link, his voice crackled back. Those sons of bitches. In Florida, we got a special law for that called malicious mischief. I'm calling the sheriff on the ham rig right in. Wait, Cap. I interrupted. Don't call. Not yet. If the cops come, they'll just run. We have them on the plant, but we don't have Cynthia. She's 50 yards away, playing dumb. We need to tie her to it. So what's the play, Cal? Mia asked, her eyes never leaving the screen. The two goons had finished planting their evidence. Gray Polo was now attaching a new padlock, their padlock, to my cage gate. They had just sealed the crime scene. The play, I said, an idea beginning to form, cold and precise. She thinks she's sealed that area. She thinks that evidence is safe until she's ready to spring her trap. She has no idea we're watching. So we do nothing. Mia looked at me. We just leave it there? Exactly. We leave it there. We have high-definition video of them breaking in, planting, and locking up. We have everything. Now we wait. Cynthia is arrogant. She's not going to be able to resist coming to see her handiwork. She's going to come and gloat. And when she does... Mia started to catch on. And when she does, I said, feeling the shift, we're going to give her a show. She wants to contaminate my shop? Fine. I've got a special system just for uninvited guests. I walked over to another panel in the corner of the shop. This one clearly marked marine grade fire suppression system. It was something I'd installed after a small welding spark fire last year. It wasn't water. Water doesn't stop a chemical or oil fire. It was foam, specifically high density AFFF, aqueous film forming foam, designed to smother a jet fuel fire in seconds. I had enough concentrate in the tanks to fill this entire shop waist deep in 30 seconds. Mia, I said, a cold grin touching my lips. She thinks she's setting a trap. She has no idea she's about to get washed out. Cynthia didn't disappoint. Arrogance is a powerful drug, and she was a heavy user. Her two goons backed away, gave a thumbs up toward the Range Rover. We watched on turns camera as Cynthia nodded. Then she stepped out her car. This was the moment she couldn't resist. She had to come see for herself. To stand on my property line and know she'd won. She walked down the road, her heels clacking again, this time on the asphalt. Her two henchmen fell in behind her like guard dogs. "She's coming," Mia whispered. "Cal, that storm is building to the east. The wind is picking up. If we're going to do this, we have to do it now." "Let her get closer," I said. Cynthia stopped just outside the open bay door. She stood just off the property line, smart enough not to step over, but close enough to gloat. "Still here, Cal," she called out, her voice carrying on the humid air. "I thought you'd be packing." "Just enjoy my private property, Cynthia," I called back. "The stuff you and your goons just trespass on." She smirked. "I don't know what you're talking about. My men were just securing the property. After all, with all the dangerous chemicals you keep around here, who knows what kind of disaster could happen?" There it was. The admission. "You mean these chemicals?" I asked, gesturing toward the back wall, where her men had just done their dirty work. "I mean your entire illegal operation," she said. "And I believe the EPA is going to be very interested in taking a closer look." "Good," I said. "Why don't we take a closer look right now?" Cynthia's eyes narrowed. She wasn't expecting this. "What are you talking about?" "Mia," I said, never taking my eyes off Cynthia. "She wants a look. Give her the show." "Copy," Mia said. She hit a key sequence. On the large screen TV in the shop, the one I use to review engine schematics, Mia projected the live feed from Turn. Crystal clear, 4K video. Gray polo and beer gut cutting the lock, carrying the bag, placing the jugs. We could see their faces, see the hazmat label. Cynthia's face went white. Her composure melted. This, she had not prepared for. That's a fake," she stammered. "It's a deep fake." "It's very real, Cynthia," I said, "and it's currently streaming to a secure out-of-state server, courtesy of Cap's ham radio antenna. Thanks for reminding me." She whirled on her two goons, her face crimson with rage. "You idiots! You let yourselves get filmed." She turned back to me, her initial fear now replaced by pure fury. "You think this saves you? You have nothing. That evidence is still on your property. The minute I call the EPA, you're the one in cuffs." She was half right. The evidence was still there, and she had just told me her exact next move. "You know, Cynthia," I said, walking over to the fire suppression panel. "You're right. It is dangerous to have all those volatile chemicals. And after watching that video, I realized your men weren't very careful. I'm worried there might have been a spill." I put my hand on the big red lever. "Can't risk a fire. I think I'll just proactively clean the area." Cynthia's eyes went wide as she realized where I was standing. "You wouldn't." I pulled the lever. A massive hiss erupted, followed by a building-shaking hump. From nozzles in the ceiling and along the walls, a thick, dense, white wall of foam blasted out. The AFFF system was designed for incredible speed and expansion. Within 5 seconds, the entire shop floor was covered. In 10 seconds, it was at my knees. Cynthia and her two goons recoiled in horror as a tidal wave of white foam poured out the open bay door, spilling onto the driveway like a slow-motion volcanic eruption. It wasn't toxic, it wasn't dangerous, but it was incredibly effective. It covered everything. Tools, workbenches, engines. And most importantly, it was flooding the entire back storage area in a 6-foot deep, sticky, coherent blanket of foam. "No!" Cynthia screamed, the sound muffled by the hiss of the system. "My evidence!" She realized her slip instantly, but it was too late. "My evidence?" I shouted back over the noise. "I thought you said it was mine?" Her two goons, Gray Polo and Beer Gut, panicked. They tried to run to the back cage to save the planted jugs, but they only made it to the door before a fresh wave of foam hit them. They slipped on the slick concrete, went down hard, and came up looking like disfigured, sputtering snowmen. Cynthia stood there helpless, her perfect white linen suit now splattered with blowback, watching in horror as her frame-up vanished under a mountain of bubbles. Our video had caught them planting it. My system had just rendered that evidence permanently neutralized, turned into an indistinguishable, unrecoverable mess, buried deep under hundreds of gallons of foam. She had lost. She knew it, and she knew we knew it. Outside, the first real crack of thunder from the storm boomed overhead, as if nature itself was applauding. The wind gusted, sending clouds of foam skittering down the street. Cynthia's siege was broken. She had been outthought, outmaneuvered, and outfoamed. She looked at me, her eyes promising murder. "This isn't over, Cal," she hissed through the spray. "Oh, I know," I said, shutting the valve. "It's just getting started." Cynthia retreated, but it wasn't surrender. It was a furious, tactical withdrawal. She and her two foam-covered snowmen piled into the Range Rover and sped off, leaving the security trucks to maintain the useless blockade and the jammer van to continue its silent work. She had lost the battle, but she still believed she could win the war. She still had the lien. She still had the auction. But she hadn't accounted for two factors: Mother Nature's fury and the cowardice of her subordinates. The storm that Mia had warned about was no longer a distant threat. It was here. The sky turned a sickly, bruised green, and the rain began, not a drizzle, but a tropical deluge. Wind howled with the force of a Category 1 hurricane. Turn was starting to struggle. "I've got to bring her down," Mia said, but not before one last look. She panned the camera across the neighborhood. The streets were already flooding. Osprey Landing's drainage system, designed more for aesthetics than function, was instantly overwhelmed. And then she saw it. "Cal, look at this." On the screen, a silver Lexus was struggling at the main intersection leading into our neighborhood. The water was rising, turning the road into a brown, churning river. This was the exact area Cynthia had illegally dredged. The excavation had destroyed the natural barriers, and now the Gulf was pouring in. The car stalled. The water rose rapidly, past the wheels, then up the doors. "Someone's in there," Mia said. She zoomed in. The driver was frantically pounding on the window. "Who is it?" I asked. "Wait, I know that car," Mia said, typing rapidly, accessing a folder on our server labeled HOA Research. She pulled up photos from the last HOA meeting. "That's it. Silver Lexus. That's Brian Wexler, the HOA treasurer. Brian, a small, nervous man with thick glasses and an uncontrolled sweating problem. He was the one who signed the checks. He was the one who processed the fines, the one who filed the lien. He wasn't a strategist like Cynthia. He was a compliant foot soldier. He was the weak link, and he was about to drown." I looked out the shop door. The water was already halfway up my driveway. My truck could make it, but it would be too slow. "I'm going," I said. "Cal, don't." Mia grabbed my arm. "He's one of them. He signed the papers to take our house." "I know," I said, grabbing a life vest and a coil of rope from a wall hook. "But we're not them. We don't let people drown." "How will you even get to him?" she asked. "The street's a river. The truck won't make it." I looked out the back of the shop, at the one thing Cynthia couldn't blockade. "I'm not taking the street." I ran to the back door and threw it open. My great-grandfather's dock was standing strong, though the Gulf was surging over it. And tied to it was my boat, a custom-built 18-foot jet-drive skiff. It was designed for shallow water. Right now, the entire neighborhood was shallow water. I jumped in, hitting the switch for the powerful jet engine. It roared to life. Mia ran out, tossing me the handheld radio. "Stay in contact. Turn is landing. I'll be blind." "Doesn't matter," I yelled over the wind. "I know exactly where I'm going." I slammed the throttle, and the skiff shot off my dock, not into the Gulf, but inland. I launched it across my own backyard, smashed through a wooden fence, which I was happy to see splinter, and out onto the flooded street. I was boating in my own neighborhood. The wind whipped my face. The rain felt like needles. The boat handled it beautifully, skimming over submerged mailboxes and uprooted landscaping. It felt like a scene from some post-apocalyptic action movie. When I got to the intersection, it was worse than I thought. The Lexus was almost completely submerged. Brian had managed to crawl out and was clinging to the roof, screaming as the current tried to rip him away. "Help me!" he shrieked, his voice thin with terror. I expertly maneuvered the skiff, bringing it broadside to the car, fighting the current. "Brian!" I yelled, grabbed my hand. He was too terrified to move. He just clung to the roof. I can't. There was no time to argue. I wrapped the rope around my waist, tied the other end to a cleat, and dove into the churning water. It was insane. The water was cold and full of debris, but my marine training took over. One breath, one kick. I grabbed Brian, yanking him off the roof just as Alexis finally gave up the fight and began to sink. He screamed. I got a hard grip on him, and the current took us both. I felt the rope go taut. Thank God. I hauled us back to the skiff. I threw Brian over the side like a wet sack of potatoes, then clambered in after him, gasping for air. Brian was curled in a fetal position in the bottom of the boat, sobbing and shivering. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. You're welcome, I said, firing the engine back up and navigating the flooded streets back to my house. When we got to the shop, he was still shaking. Mia ran out with blankets and a glass of water. We got him inside and sat him on a stool. I think she tried to kill me, he whispered, staring into space. What? Mia asked. Cynthia, Brian said, his voice trembling. She called me 10 minutes ago. She knew the storm was coming. She said I had to go get the hard copy records from the HOA office. Immediately, she knew that intersection floods. She knew I'd be trapped. She was trying to silence me. Silence you about what, Brian? I asked, sitting across from him. He looked at me, his eyes full of tears and terror. But underneath, it was something else. Anger. Everything, he said. He reached into his soaked jacket pocket and pulled out an object wrapped in a Ziploc bag. It was a USB flash drive. I made copies of everything, he said. I knew she'd try to pin it on me when it all went bad. I just didn't know she was this ruthless. It's all here. The real ledgers, the offshore accounts, the kickbacks from the contractors, and her plan for your property. He held the drive out to me. She didn't just want your house, Cal. She was in negotiations with a developer from Dubai. They want to build a mega resort, but they need deep water access. They need the canals. So she tried to take my house so she could sell something she didn't even own. I said, the whole picture finally clicking into place. She faked documents to claim your family's submerged land rights had lapsed, Brian said. She paid off a judge to fast-track the foreclosure. It's a $50 million conspiracy, and I've got all the emails, all the wire transfers. I took the flash drive. It was a smoking gun. It was the key to the kingdom. The storm had just delivered not only destruction, but our salvation. That tiny flash drive was more powerful than the hurricane raging outside. Mia plugged it into her laptop, and Cynthia Davenport's entire shadow world bloomed across the screen. It wasn't just a ledger, it was an indictment. Oh my God, Mia whispered, scrolling through the spreadsheets. Cal, this isn't just HOA misconduct. This is a criminal enterprise. Brian, now a little calmer with some whiskey in him, began to walk us through it. Here, he said, pointing to a tab code named Project Osprey. That's what she called it. These are the payments to Goliath Security. Those are the guys blockading your street. Here's the invoice for the jammer, purchased through a shell corp. And here, he continued, his voice hardening, is the $50,000 payment to a consultant at the county property appraiser's office to reassess your home's value to almost nothing, justifying the foreclosure. But the financials were just the tip of the iceberg. Mia opened a folder labeled Legal Correspondence. My blood ran cold. Brian, Mia said, her voice like ice. What is this? Callahan file legacy modification? Brian winced. That's the worst part. Cynthia hired a law firm that specializes in old estate law. They found a loophole, or they made one. They created a forged document. He opened a scanned PDF. It looked official, stamped and notarized. It was an affidavit from the 1980s, supposedly signed by my grandfather, who had been dead for 15 years. In it, my grandfather supposedly ceded all sovereign submerged land rights to the Osprey Landing HOA for a token fee of $1. This is a fake, I said, my voice low and dangerous. My grandfather's signature looked nothing like that. Of course it's fake, Brian said. The notary doesn't exist. The seal? Bought online. But it looked real enough to file with the county. Cynthia used it as a legal basis to claim ownership of the canals. And with that, She opened negotiations with the Dubai investors. Mia was typing furiously. I'm running a cross-search on this notary. Janet Smith. No record. But the law firm, Harrison Thorne, they're real. They're real and they're dirty, Brian said. Cynthia paid them $200,000 to manufacture this document and to testify to its authenticity in court. It was all here. Conspiracy, mail fraud, wire fraud, forgery, bribery. It was a full-blown RICO case waiting to happen. And then I saw it, a subfolder labeled contingency. Open it, I said. Inside was a single file. It was a dossier on me, not my military record, a personal dossier. They had hired a private investigator. They had my credit history, my medical records from the VA, photos of Mia going shopping. And there was a memo from Cynthia to her lawyer. Subject, the Callahan problem. If the civil foreclosure is stalled by a CRA, proceed with Plan B. Attached dossier is enough to trigger a federal investigation into his business. Our engineer has confirmed the barrels are in place. Make the call to the EPA as soon as we have the signal. She planned to frame me for weeks. I said, disgust rising in my throat. The foam, we just stopped the first wave. She might have other stuff out there. I don't think so, Brian said. That engineer, that was one of her goons. It was a desperation plan. She knew her forged document wouldn't hold up to real scrutiny. She needed you gone, discredited, or in jail so she could seize the property by default. The storm outside seemed to be quieting down, or maybe the chaos in the shop had just gotten so loud it drowned the wind. We had everything. The smoking gun, the ammunition, and the star witness. Mia, I said, standing up, package it, the whole thing. On it, she said, fingers flying. She created an encrypted zip file. She named it Operation Harbor Master. It contained the hot mic video of Cynthia with the DEP investigator admitting to the SCRA violation, the drone footage from turn of gray polo and Beerga breaking in and planning the hazmat, Brian's entire USB drive, the ledgers, the emails, the forged document, the bribery scheme, a copy of my great-grandfather's original 1953 sovereign submerged land rights deed, a signed, sworn affidavit from Brian Wexler, detailing everything he knew. Mia had typed it up as he talked. It's ready, she said. Where to? Cap? I said into the radio. You still there? Haven't gone anywhere, son. His voice boomed. Sounds like you just reeled in a big one. Bigger than you know, Cap. We have a package. We need it to go to 3 people. Right? No, 5 minutes ago. Mr. Ader at the DP, the county sheriff, and... I paused, thinking. We need someone Cynthia can't buy. We need someone bigger. Mia, what about the FBI office in Tampa? Better, Mia said, a cold smile on her face. I know the chief of criminal investigation for the IRS in Jacksonville. I helped him track some wildlife traffickers who use similar financial methods. They hate tax fraud. Perfect, I said. Cap, can you get a signal to Jacksonville? Son, Cap chuckled. I can get a signal to the dark side of the moon. Send me the file over the mesh. I'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. Mia hit send. The 3 gigabyte file shot across our internal network to Cap's ham rig. And from there, it blasted out over shortwave to a remote server, where it will be relayed to the DEP, the sheriff, and most importantly, the IRS. Cynthia's jammer van was still parked down the street, a useless icon of her lost control. She had cut the phone lines. She had no idea we'd just used 1940s technology to send a digital bomb capable of ending her entire empire. What do we do now? Brian asked, looking small and scared. Now, I said, looking out at the dying storm, we wait for the cavalry. The silence after sending Operation Harbor Master was more unnerving than the storm. The hurricane had passed, leaving behind a flooded, humid, and eerily still world. The jammer van was still there, a stupid watchdog guarding an empty house. The security truck still blocked the road, but the men inside looked bored and miserable from being cooped up in the rain. Brian Wexler, the treasurer, was exhausted. We let him sleep on an old cot in the office. He was our witness and our asset. Protecting him was as important as protecting the USB drive. Mia and I sat in the shop, drinking cold coffee. The power walls were still humming. We had won. We knew we had. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the moment you set the charge and wait for the blast. "What's she doing?" Mia whispered, monitoring the turn camera, which was back in the air now that the wind had died. The screen showed a thermal view of the neighborhood. Cynthia Davenport's house, a 10,000 square foot Mediterranean-style mansion on the Gulf, half a mile away, was lit up like a Christmas tree. There was a lot of activity. "She's panicking," I said. The frame-up failed. Her treasurer vanished with a storm. "She knows Brian knows everything. She has to assume he drowned. Or that he flipped," Mia said. "She's cleaning house. Look." The camera zoomed. A black service van, the kind used by shredding companies, was parked in her circular driveway. 2 men were carrying large plastic bins from her office to the van. "She's destroying evidence," I said. "Cap, are you seeing this?" "Clear as day, Cal." Cap's voice came back. "The IRS isn't like that. Obstruction of justice, they call it. I'm forwarding the live feed to them as we speak." Cynthia's arrogance was staggering. Even facing failure, she believed she could shred her way out of it. She had no idea the digital copy of everything was already in federal hands. The day dragged on. The county sheriff called over Cap's radio. "We got the package. Don't go anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. We are coordinating. This is bigger than we thought." Coordinating meant what? We were about to find out. Dusk fell, painting the sky and the leftover foam on my driveway in shades of orange and purple. It was almost beautiful. Then we heard it. Not sirens, not yelling. It was a sound I knew well from my time overseas. A heavy, rhythmic thump-thump-thump of rotor blades. Not a news chopper. This was deeper, heavier. Mia and I ran outside. In the sky to the west, 2 MH-60 Jayhawk helicopters from the U.S. Coast Guard were coming in, flying low and fast over the water. They weren't headed for us. They were headed for Cynthia's mansion. At the same time, from the east, down the main road Cynthia's trucks had blocked, a convoy appeared. This wasn't local cops. These were black, heavy-duty federal SUVs. Dozens of them. They reached the blockade. The Goliath security contractors, seeing the convoy, got out of their trucks, hands on their holsters, trying to look tough. It was a mistake. The lead SUV, an armored Suburban, didn't even slow down. It slammed into the security truck, blocking the road with a sickening crunch of metal, pushing aside like a toy. The convoy flooded the neighborhood. They split off with disciplined precision. Some went straight for the jammer van. 4 agents in full armor labeled FBI jumped out and used a battering ram on the back door. Others swarmed Cynthia's mansion. Agents from the RSCI, Criminal Investigation, the FBI, and even inspectors from the EPA were all there. And then my own cavalry arrived. A black SUV pulled up to my workshop. The door opened and Mr. Ader from the DEP stepped out. But this time he was in a state-issue jacket with a sidearm. With him was a woman in a severe business suit. "Mrs. Callahan?" "Mr. Callahan," the woman said. "I'm Special Agent Davis, IRSCI. We're here to secure our witness." "Brian's inside," Mia said. "He's safe." "Good," Agent Davis said. "And thank you for the package. It's the best Christmas present we've gotten in years." Mr. Ader looked around the shop, at the solar setup, at the skiff still sitting in the yard, at the leftover foam. "You live an interesting life, Mr. Callahan. Only when we have company," I replied. "So where is she?" Mia asked, looking toward Cynthia's mansion, which was now lit up by spotlights. "She's making a run for it," Agent Davis said, checking her phone. "She thought we wouldn't know." She pointed to the Gulf. One of the Jayhawk helicopters had switched on a high-powered searchlight, aiming it straight down at a sleek 80-foot white Sportfisher yacht that was trying to power out of Cynthia's private dock. It was the C-suite. "She's trying for international waters?" I asked, almost laughing. "She thinks so," Davis said, "but she forgot one thing." "What's that?" "She's trying to escape by us." "Oh, what is she doing?" Mia was typing on her laptop, which she brought outside. "I'm on the AIS, Automatic Identification System." "She's turned off her transponder. Illegal, but it doesn't matter." Mia looked at me and grinned. "Cal, the channel. She has to come through our channel to get to the Gulf." I grinned back. "I know." I turned to Agent Davis. "Agent, will you be needing our assistance in apprehending the suspect?" She looked confused. "We have the Coast Guard." No, I said, walking toward my dock. "We've got something better. My great-grandfather always said, never build a bridge when a gate will do." I walked to the end of my concrete pier, right where the main channel, my channel, passed by. On it was a massive electric winch and a series of orange warning buoys. But they weren't just buoys. I opened a metal control box and threw a heavy, industrial switch. 100 yards out, directly in the path of Cynthia's speeding yacht. There was a churning roar as the water began to foam. A line of thick steel posts, spaced 5 feet apart, began to rise from the channel floor. It was an old anti-theft boat barrier my great-grandfather had installed in the 60s. It still worked perfectly. Aboard the C-suite, Cynthia Davenport was at the helm, her blonde hair whipped by the wind, her face a mask of manic determination. She had seen the agents swarm her house. She had heard the shredding van go quiet. She had taken her last option, escape. Her yacht was a speed demon, capable of 50 knots. She thought she could outrun the Coast Guard and disappear in Cuba or the Bahamas. She had accounted for everything, except me. As I threw the switch, the steel barrier rose from the water. It was like the fingers of a rusted iron giant, sealing the only exit to the sea. The Jayhawk searchlight illuminated the scene. Cynthia, blinded by the light, didn't see the post until it was far too late. She tried to turn. An 80-foot yacht doesn't turn on a dime. There was a sickening, high-pitched SCRECH as her multi-million-dollar fiberglass hull scraped against one of the steel posts, leaving a long white scar. She had to slam the engines into reverse to keep from being gutted. The yacht drifted helpless, its engines churning uselessly. She was trapped in the canal I owned. Agent Davis looked at me, utterly stunned. I don't even know if that's legal. It was grandfathered in 1953. I said, crossing my arms. Access control. It's right in the charter. The second Jayhawk helicopter didn't waste time. It hovered over the yacht's stern, and 4 men in black tactical gear, fully armed, fast roped onto the deck. This was the Coast Guard's MSSD, Maritime Security Safety Team. They were the best of the best. Within 30 seconds, they had the bridge. They dragged Cynthia, screaming and cursing, away from the helm. They cuffed her right there on her own teak plank deck. Across the bay, Cap came over the radio. "Cal, son, that's the prettiest thing I've seen since Iwo Jima. You want me to play some victory music?" "Hold that thought, Cap." I laughed. "Show's not over." A boat from the county sheriff's department pulled alongside the yacht. They took custody of Cynthia from the MSSD team. As they led her away, the police boat passed right by my dock. Cynthia was sitting in the back, cuffed, her linen suit now soaked and grimy. Even from 50 yards, I could see her eyes. It wasn't arrogance anymore. It wasn't anger. It was pure, unfiltered hatred. She had tried to steal my home, ruin my life, and frame me for a federal crime. She had failed. I raised my cold coffee mug in a silent toast. She looked away. As the sun started to rise, our neighborhood looked like a liberated war zone. Federal agents were everywhere, carrying evidence boxes from the HOA office and Cynthia's house. The 2 goons, Gray Polo and Beer Gut, had been arrested trying to flee in their foam-covered service truck. The Goliath security contractors were all in cuffs for obstruction and conspiracy. The jammer van was seized. The shredding truck had been stopped before it could power up its shredders. Brian Wexler, escorted by Agent Davis, walked out of my shop. He wasn't a shivering mess anymore. He stood a little straighter. He had picked the winning side. He was going to be the government's star witness. He probably wasn't going to jail. Mr. Ader from the DEP shook my hand. "Mr. Callahan, I can't comment on an ongoing investigation, but off the record, you just did the state of Florida a massive favor. Anything you need, anything. Just some peace and quiet, sir," I said, "and maybe someone to clean up all this foam." As the last federal SUV pulled away, carrying the last of conspirators, a strange quiet fell over Osprey Landing. The neighbors, who had watched the entire thing from behind their curtains, slowly started to emerge. They looked dazed, like they'd just woken up from a long nightmare. Cap Reynolds walked over, carrying 2 cold beers. He handed one to me. "Well," he said, looking out at the channel, "I do believe the Homeowners Association has just been officially disbanded." "I think so, Cap," I said, clinking my bottle against his. "So, what are you going to do with all this?" he asked, waving his hand at the canals, the docks, the entire neighborhood that was now effectively at my mercy. I looked at my workshop, where Mia was already starting to organize the cleanup. I looked at my solid, concrete house, and I looked at the channel my great-grandfather had dug with sweat and dynamite. "I'm thinking," I said, "it's time we started a new association. One that works for the people, not against them. One that protects this water, instead of exploiting it." Cap grinned. "Sounds like a hell of a lot of work." "It is," I said, "but this time we'll do it right." In the 6 months following the Osprey landing raid, as the papers called it, life changed completely. Cynthia Davenport's empire collapsed like a house of credit cards, facing a 47-count federal indictment ranging from RICO and wire fraud to obstruction of justice. She took a plea. She gave up her partners, including the law firm Harris and Thorne, who had created the forged documents. She is currently facing 20 years in federal prison with no chance of parole. The Dubai investors vanished like smoke, their lawsuit against Cynthia's estate dismissed when my irrefutable ownership of the canals came to light. But the collapse of the HOA left a power vacuum. Basic services, trash collection, road maintenance, ground to a halt. The neighborhood, free from tyranny, was now facing chaos. And everyone was looking at me. I didn't ask for it. I just wanted to fix my boat engines. But I owned the one thing everyone needed: access. So I called a meeting, not in some stuffy boardroom. We held on my front lawn. Most of the neighborhood showed up, even the people who had been on Cynthia's board, now looking sheepish and scared. I stood on the tailgate of my truck. "Listen up," I said. "I don't want to be the new Cynthia. I don't care about the color of your shutters or if you leave your trash can out. But here's the deal. This water is a legacy. It's not mine, it's not yours. It belongs to this place." That day, we formed the Osprey Landing Channel Trust. It was simple. I, as the legal owner of the sovereign submerged lands, leased the use of the canals to the trust for $1 a year. In return, the trust, run by a democratically elected 5-person board of homeowners, Cap was the first president, would collect a small, reasonable fee from every homeowner with a dock. But here was the kicker. 80% of that money didn't go to parties or fancy statues at the gate. It went directly into a dedicated fund for environmental restoration, replanting the mangroves, seeding oyster beds, and ensuring that a disaster like the storm surge never happened again. The old HOA office, we turned into a small field research station for Mia and her colleagues at NOAA. And my workshop, it became famous. After the story went national, veterans from all over the state started reaching out, not to complain about their HOAs, but to ask how I learned to fix engines. So, Operation Harbor Master took on a new meaning. My shop is now the headquarters for Veterans on the Water. It's a non-profit I started with Mia. We take newly discharged vets and teach them a trade, marine mechanics. We teach them how to rebuild an outboard, how to patch fiberglass, how to navigate by the stars if their GPS fails. We're taking something built for war and destruction, my skills, their experience, and turning it into something that builds. We're fixing boats. And in the process, we're helping to fix a few people, too. I was standing on my dock yesterday. The sun was setting, painting the Gulf. One of my students, a young former Army medic named Sarah, had just finished firing up an old Yamaha she'd rebuilt. The hum of the engine was sweet. "Sounds good. Harbor Master," she called out. People started calling me that. It started as a joke. Now, it's just what they call me. I looked out at the channel my great-grandfather dug. Cynthia's yacht, the C-Suite, was seized by the feds and auctioned off. The proceeds went into our restoration fund. The steel posts are still there, submerged but ready just in case. I didn't go looking for this fight. But when it came, I relied on my legacy, my training, and the smartest woman I know. Cynthia thought she was fighting one stubborn Marine. She had no idea she was up against history, technology, and an entire community just waiting to be set free. She wanted to take my house. Instead, she gave me the whole neighborhood.